Our next speaker, I'm not going to introduce, I first have to say, happy birthday, Andrea. So everyone, a huge virtual little hand clap for Andrea. It's her birthday today. Thank you there. On cue. Andrea is the winner of the 2019 Lurie's Marketing and Leadership Innovation Award. She's also the jury president of the IAB Bookmarks Awards. Andrea Quaye is an award-winning veteran marketer who has led some of the biggest brands on the African continent. She has an obsession for consumer and doing work with meaning and impact. Her personal learning from lockdown has been the need for simplification and focus on the things that really matter. Family. I smile because I know Andrea has sort of moved on and she's doing different things from last year when I was still working with her. But family, and I hear her, it's been so difficult. But yes, family, physical and mental health, absolutely. The practice of gratitude, massively agree with that. Bonds of friendship. Her topic today is what 2020 is telling us about the future of marketing. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, everybody, and a big thank you to Dale for inviting me here today. I am really grateful for it. So what I wanted to talk about today is what 2020 is telling us about the future of marketing. And, 2020 has already started. It's just halfway through, but it's already proven to be one of the most disruptive years in a couple of decades. And most of you have had plans that are now not happening. And it's exactly the same for me. I was supposed to attend an executive MBA program in the States right now before returning to the work world. Instead, I feel like I'm getting an education that is maybe even more valuable than any executive MBA, at zero cost, of course. And that's because I've been watching closely how companies and brands are managing their way through an incredibly challenging environment. And I don't think that there has ever been a more challenging or more interesting time to be a marketer. Because we are forced to confront three massive disruptions at virtually the same time. On one hand, we must manage an unprecedented global pandemic and then work through intense racial and social unrest whilst dealing with a massive economic collapse. And so I'm really grateful for the opportunity to speak here today because it's really forced me to distill what I've been observing. And so today I'd like to focus on two questions. The first one is, what are we learning about how to market through a situation like this one? And the second one is, what is 2020 telling us about marketing in the future? So let's start with the short term. What are we learning about managing through this period? Amongst some of the advice that has been given, I've noticed that there are four recurring themes, and I think they're particularly relevant. The first one is really about reading the room. Secondly, resisting the bandwagon. Thirdly, offering real value. And fourthly, to e-market. Let's start off by reading the room. When the world changes almost overnight, the very first thing you must do is ask yourself, if we keep running our current copy, would that be stupid? In the middle of a pandemic, you probably shouldn't ask people to lick their fingers because it is tone deaf and irresponsible. Take a look at this. It's so interesting how, given this new context, we interpret this piece of comms totally differently. And when people have just learned that an airplane is one of the most dangerous places to be at, you probably don't want to try and lure them with discount fares and to tell them that there's never been a better time to fly. These kind of messages not only irritate people, but they also tell them that as a brand, you're not in touch with what's happening in their lives. The second thing we've learned is to resist the bandwagon. So if you've avoided saying something tone deaf, you need to ask yourself, do we go quiet? And if not, how do you go about saying something relevant? Or do we just jump on the empathy bandwagon? And yes, we all know that brands must empathize, but we also know that jumping on the easy bandwagon of blind, meaningless empathy is, well, truly blind and very meaningless. And I'm sure that you've all seen what this bandwagon looks like, and I'll play a few seconds of this mashup. Okay. That didn't play, but it's fine. I am sure most of you remember the mashups on YouTube of all the brands saying exactly the same things and sounding the same. And now, here we go. Okay, I will move on. Now, did any of those bandwagon brands hurt themselves by saying something that everyone else was saying, simply mirroring what consumers were feeling? Probably not. But they were most certainly wasting resources that could have either been put onto the bottom line or could have been channeled into much more effective work. The third one is about offering real value. Consumers are under huge financial pressure, and so it's important that we're clear about the value that we offer them, whether it's a moment of refreshment, a 2-hour escape into a story, or a common staple that makes daily life better. It's also really important to give them a fair deal as we design our pricing and our promotional strategies, and we need to ask ourselves if we should offer everyday low prices or promotional discounting in order to maintain the frequency of usage. Some of the simplest and best examples that I've seen are actually with the food retailers, where they talk about, feed your family of 4 for 150 rands, or based on the focus that they've put on the bigger bulk size SKUs that are known to offer more value. And then lastly, it's really all about e-market or e-marketing. We all know that the power has been shifting to retailers, and the pandemic has actually greatly accelerated this shift. Here in South Africa, we are significantly behind countries like the US and China, but we're seeing some really huge growth figures. We're seeing like 700% increase in traffic and 15% increase in basket size in some of the e-tailer platforms. So no matter where you are in the world, none of us can see online retail as simply a distribution channel. We have to treat them as a crucial brand building mechanism. We have to give particular care to the user experience we create from the moment the consumer browses to the moment they receive it and they unbox your product. So now these 4 themes are actually pretty obvious. But as admired company after admired company declares bankruptcy, the importance of getting through this period should not be underestimated. Because permission to pursue a long-term vision is only given to those who survive and who win today. But the biggest question that every marketer should be asking themselves is not how do we market through this current mess? It is about what does marketing through this current mess actually tell us about the future of marketing? In other words, what is 2020 teaching us about the future of marketing? History continues to move faster than ever, and moments will continue to change faster than ever. But the more the moments change, the more the fundamentals of marketing become super important. And it's all unfolding, but here are 3 lessons that I believe are crucial for the future of marketing. The first one is about meeting real needs. If 2020 has taught us anything, it's that we must really understand the role of our brands and what it plays in people's lives. Now in the tough times, but also in the good times. And the role can be functional or it can be emotional, but ideally it's a combination of both. It's a functional role with an emotional connection. But we must first ask ourselves, what is the real utility of our brand? What fundamental function is our brand built on? And why does our brand deliver something truly and uniquely valuable? Secondly, we need to ask ourselves, what is our brand's memory structure? And how is that memory structure expressed in the new context? And in 2020, we've seen the value of being clear on this functional delivery as well as these brand memories, and how valuable these things are, especially when the world turns upside down. And 2 of my favorite examples of brands that have done this are from my old beer world. And the first one is a Budweiser example that taps into one of the most iconic campaigns of the 90s and speaks of relevance today.
Hello?
Hey, who? What's up?
Nothing, B. In quarantine, having a bud. What's up with you?
Nothing. Quarantining, having a bud.
True.
What's up? What's up? Yo, what's that?
Yo, pick up the phone. Hello?
What's that?
What's up? Yo, where's Dookie?
Yo, Duke. Yo.
What's up?
What's that?
So you okay, B?
I'm good, B. Just quarantining, having a bud. Thanks for checking in.
Okay, the second example is our very own Castle Light, where it goes about reinforcing its history of unlocking extra cold refreshment in a very unexpected way.
Hello, boy.
Oh,
A favorite.
Biza le kowa ka speed ile chingelane zake na black master when and then up he come around like feet.
okay, so in each of these cases, when the crisis hit, the brands were able to quickly tap into their true ethos because it's something that they've been building over the years. But what they were able to do was twist it and to pivot it, as everybody says, in such a way that it is compelling in today's unique context. The second one is really about always building. As marketers, we're trained to focus on what's good for the brand in the long term. And yet, short-term sales are hugely important. In this case, it's essential for survival. So CEOs and CMOs are put under huge amounts of pressure on how to allocate market-facing resources. Now, every marketer has to make a decision based on their own circumstances. But here is the reality. If you're not building your brand at every moment, even in the face of adversity, then we're simply postponing an inevitable unhappy ending. Sometimes the adversity comes in a form of massive disruption, like it's done in 2020. But more often, it comes as steady shifts in the market, shifts in economics and consumer preferences that move like icebergs, slowly but really powerfully. And I've seen this firsthand. I've seen it at SAB, where a decade ago we saw one of South Africa's most iconic brands, Carling Black Label, fall into steady decline, all because it just didn't keep up with the times. It was the biggest brand by far, but it was also a mainstream brand that hadn't adjusted to the premiumization of the market. and long-term loyalists had actually began abandoning the brand. The easy thing to do would be to cut the marketing budgets, shift the funds onto new premium brands, and play the pricing game to slow the inevitable decline, and tell ourselves that there was nothing we could do in the face of the change of wind. In other words, the easiest thing to do was to milk the brand. And it's basically what we did for a few years, until we got new leadership that saw things differently. Our new MD, Norman Adamy, believed that giving up on big brands that had fallen into decline was lazy marketing. He believed that iconic brands that had lost their luster over time could return to health if they figured out how to reinvent their long-term identity to become something more relevant in the new environment. So after several years of major cuts, our marketing budgets for Carling were restored to the levels that were proportionate to the actual contributions of the brand. And we invested these resources behind a fully dimensional new campaign that brought Carling's new theme of masculine reward to life in a way that appealed in the new era. And that was a brave move, because we knew we would not be able to turn the brand around right away. But we also knew that turning things around would require long-term investment in brand building, and that there could be no shortcuts. And so the brand continued to decline for 3 years, but each year it got healthier and the rate of decline slowed down until 2013, where it actually returned to growth. And not only did it continue to grow, it also steadily marched up the pricing ladder, becoming increasingly less price dependent. It took a lot of discipline. And that really leads me to my third and final lesson from 2020. Stay true. Whether you call it your brand purpose, your brand ethos, or whatever name you give to what your brand stands for, you must stay true to it. Before the crisis, during the crisis, after the crisis. Because brands that actually are clear about what they stand for get stronger when the crisis hits. And my favorite example is obviously how Nike engaged with the Black Lives Matter issue in the US. Nike is famous for standing with its athletes, and that included Colin Kaepernick, whose peaceful protest of taking the knee was controversial in the US. And when the disruption came in this year, Nike had built up such a track record for standing up for what they believed in, even if they risked some of their consumers. So when they quickly showed their support for Black Lives Matter, they were able to do so with so much more authenticity than other brands, especially their competitors. And so, in conclusion, for me, the biggest lesson in 2020 is that if you have not already established who you are before the crisis comes, then the crisis will reveal who you are. And no matter what message you manufacture in the moment, people will still know who you are. So meeting needs, always building, staying true during, before, and after the crisis. In my mind, those are the 3 critical lessons 2020 is teaching us about the future of marketing. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts with you, and thank you for your time.